Hey everyone, it's Jessica Michaels here with the Cherry on Top Crafts. I have something super fun that you've all been waiting here to see, which is how I create my album charms for my little mini albums. So here's all the supplies that I typically use. Again, yours are going to vary a little bit. Of course, you're going to have different beads. I start with this chain here, which is called a curb chain. You can also use a cable chain if that's what you have. And I typically start with 10 and I clip the one here below the 10th one, and as you can see, it usually goes flying across my desk, and then I am left with a chain of just 10 loops. So that's what I'm going to start with. Then I'm going to start with a jump ring here and a lobster clasp, and I am going to attach the lobster clasp onto the top of my chain, and I like to use these pliers that came in a set of 3. It's probably easiest to use the flat-headed pliers to actually hold the jump ring, and then use the other set to kind of pry the jump ring apart, and then you can insert that jump ring into your curb chain and your lobster clasp. That's what I'm going to do for my first little thing on my chain here. I'm going to go ahead and close up this jump ring. As you can see, they manipulate super easy, so you don't have to be strong or use a lot of hand strength or anything to do this. These jump rings, I believe, are 6mm size. You can use up to 10 probably if you want, but I don't like a lot of bulk between my beads and my chain, so I like to use these 6mm size myself. Now, next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make our little bead chains. So in order to make a bead chain, you're going to need some ball head pins. These are 2-inch size and they have a little ball head on them. And then I like to insert a little seed bead. These are just some normal, I think they're called glass seed beads that I have. It just came in this huge set and I have a ton of them. And then you're going to use this looping tool. You want to insert your head pin into the open end and then have it come out into that little tiny circle on the other side. So I am just going to squeeze this gently, and as you can see, this makes a little loop at the end of our beads so that you can use a jump ring now to attach this to your actual curb chain. So this is what creates your little bead charms on here. Sometimes they're not quite straight enough to my liking, and sometimes they don't close the entire way. So what I do is I typically put my jump ring on first and go ahead and thread that through here and get this attached to my curb chain now. And then when I close up my jump ring, I go ahead and tighten up that ring from the looping tool as well. I don't know why sometimes it doesn't close the whole way. Maybe it's because I'm using shorter head pins. It seems to work a little bit better for me when I'm using longer ones. Like I have, I think 4-inch ones that I'm going to use here on the bigger charms, and it does seem to close up a little bit better usually for those. But this at least gets you started and you don't have to wire wrap your beads by hand. So it's kind of a win-win for me. If I don't have to wrap these loops by hand, then that's like a winning situation for me, and I don't have to worry about getting them super perfect. All I have to do is tighten them up. That works for me. So I'm going to link this little looping tool down below for you. I'm going to link everything that I'm using from the Cherry shop as well. Of course, your beads are going to vary a little bit. You can order whichever beads suit your fancy and go with whatever album that you're working on. I'm using beads that match my Paige Evans Halloween album. It's a little 4x4 mini album. I'll show you that here in a bit, but I am going to match my beads to that, of course. Some of these are from the Cherry shop, so I will link those below for you. And then I like to use a little focal point at the very bottom of my charm. So I've grabbed these little cute Halloween style beads from my stash that I'm actually going to use on the very bottom. You can use a bow on the bottom. You can also use tassels. I've done that before where I've either handmade tassels or used fabric tassels, and you can use whichever items that you want on the bottom of your charm. That's the joy of doing this yourself. You can make them exactly the way that you want them to look, and you can have a nice little chunky album charm that's customized for your personal album. So I'm just going to continue working on this. Basically, you just open these jump rings, You add your beads after you use your looping tool to make your little bead charms on each one of the head pins, and then you just attach it to your curb chain. It's pretty easy and simple. It does take a little bit of time, but I just absolutely love the end result. Now, as I'm working on adding my little beads to my curb chain, I'm kind of picking it up as I go and looking to see where everything is going to lay and seeing which spots I need to fill in. Obviously, I have some larger beads that I'm working with today, so I want to make sure that nothing's gonna fall off and overpower anything that's smaller on here. Of course, my focal point bead has a bigger hole, so I had that to contend with. So my fix for that was just to add a larger bead underneath. That way that head pin didn't slide directly through my bead. So that's kind of a little fix that you can do, or a little tip whenever your head pins are too small for the holes in your beads. You can just add a larger bead underneath it, or you can add seed beads and you can kind of mix up the colors that way and the style. And it just kind of fills in that space so that you're still able to get that head pin on there and hold it together. So I've got my little focal point bead here that I'm working on right now. I just used my looper tool. I'm going to go ahead and close this up a little bit and get this one ready to go onto my curb chain. I know this is going to go at the very, very bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and put this little guy on. Again, just opening up my jump ring using my pliers from my little jewelry set that comes in 3. It comes with, again, the flat one, and it comes with the rounded edge pliers, and then the third one is the cutting tool that you see on my desk there laying. It's the pink one. So I don't use it very much. I only used it at the very beginning, and that's all that I needed to use it. But these other two I use every time. So they do really come in handy. And then from here on out, it's just kind of mixing and matching my colors, my sizes of my beads, and I'm putting the seed beads on, I think, all of the bottoms. I ended up doing with my little seed beads in my coordinating Halloween colors to go with my album. So that's just something I like to do. I really like the look and the feel of the little seed beads at the very bottom. And again, it helps fill in any spaces. So if the holes of my larger beads are too big, which in my case, these ones are perfect, but if they were a little bit too big, I could fill in that space using those seed beads, and then my larger bead wouldn't fall through. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick this up and go ahead and attach this to my curb chain and close up that jump ring to attach it. So again, you can kind of see how this is coming together. I just continue building this. At some point here, I do like to just kind of get a whole bunch of these beads ready to go and get them looped and ready to adhere onto my curb chain, so I'm not going back and forth so much. And then I just kind of go to town with attaching them to the curb chain itself. So I'm going to speed this up here for a moment. I think you guys have the idea. I'm going to show you what it looks like as it's filling itself in here. So you can see at this point, it's filling up very nicely and becoming pretty full. I just need to add a few more things, but this is a good stopping point. So when you're adding your beads, I like to make sure that every ring on my curb chain has at least one thing on it, if not more than that. Sometimes I'll double or triple up my beads on my curb chain. Sometimes I'll attach them directly to another jump ring from another bead section. It just kind of depends on where I want the chunkiness and the bulk to fall on my chain itself. And usually I like the bulky bit to be kind of in the middle and towards the bottom a little bit more than at the top, if that makes sense. I like to keep the top a little bit thinner because that's what's going to attach to my album, and I like to keep it just a little bit thin up there and kind of build on my charm towards the bottom. So I'm just filling this in a little bit more. I want to go ahead and add my little album charm here. You can see Doodlebug makes these really cute charms, and I found this cute little pumpkin one in the cherry shop, and I thought this would be just perfect to put on my little album, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. I've got some other ones here from my stash as well that I've had for quite a while, so I'm excited to possibly get to use some of those as well. And I think I'm going to use, there's like a little spider web in here. I think it would be just perfect for this because the bottom focal point bead on here is that giant spider, so I thought, you know what, why don't we add had this cute little spider web on my charm as well. So again, to attach these, the Doodlebug one had a little lobster clasp on it already, so all I had to do was hook that on here somewhere, and then this one didn't have anything, so I just opened up a jump ring, and then I'm just attaching it just like I would a normal bead. So for things like this, I love to hold my charm up in the air like this and just see where everything's going to lay. And you can see how it's filling in and just becoming a bigger cluster. And I'm just kind of jiggling it around, making sure I have all my colors the way that I want them to. And then now it's ready to go onto my album. So I'm going to show you guys how I do that. I have an eyelet tool here. This is called a Crop-A-Dile. And I just use this one side here to punch a hole at the very top of my album. And then I can insert one of these little eyelets here. I have one that's in the flower shape, which is perfect because there's lots of flowers on this little mini album. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert that at the top of my Crop-A-Dile, give it a good squeeze, and then that will attach my little eyelet to the very top of my album. And then remember that lobster clasp that we put on the top of our charm? I'm going to go ahead and put that at the very top. But what I found out with this particular one, my lobster clasp on this one is not quite big enough, so I would suggest maybe getting a little bit larger lobster clasp. I couldn't close it up. It was fine and it would have went through there, but I couldn't actually close the clasp and get the little part that closes, the hinge, I guess it's called, to actually go down. So it's fine, it would stay on here, but I wasn't comfortable with leaving it like that because if I were to flip this upside down or something, it wouldn't stay on. So my fix for this today is going to be to grab a jump ring, and you can see I just attached a jump ring to the very top of that lobster clasp, and then I attached that into that eyelet. So here's what it looks like on my album and on my album shelf. I hope you guys enjoyed this process today, and I hope that you've learned something and you can now go make your own album charms. I'll link everything down below for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.